for tuning in to this episode of More Right Rudder, the podcast of the National Association of Flight Instructors. My name is Sarah Stout. I'm the Program Development Manager here at NAFI and your host for this podcast. Joining me today is Wayne Bailey. Wayne leads our drone special interest group and is a very experienced Part 107 pilot and instructor. Welcome, Wayne.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. So we're glad you're taking the time to come on the podcast. Instructional opportunities in the drone world and how manned aircraft instructors can access those and use that to their benefit is one of those kind of overlooked areas of flight instruction. So I've been talking to Wayne over for several weeks, and I've learned a lot about what flight instructors can do if they just go out and get a 107 certificate, which is really pretty simple. We'll talk about that. And how they can expand their businesses and promote safety in several facets of aviation within their community. So Wayne, let's start here. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into drones and instructing in this arena?
Absolutely. Um, with my background, I went to work for the state fire marshal's office in 1995. I retired in 2019 as a deputy director over fire and rescue certifications. So I've been a volunteer since 1975 doing rescue, fire, EMS. And 2016, Santa Claus brought me a drone.
Cool.
And I'd heard all these horror stories. This is 2016, Phantom 3. And 6 months later, it's still in the box. I'm going, if this thing flies away, Mrs. Claus is going to pitch a fit. Finally, one day she come to me and said, you either fly it or it's going back to the toy store. And I went, okay. So I self-taught myself to fly it. That was 2017. 2018, I went ahead. I think we're transitioning over from Section 333 over to the 107. So
Mhm.
February of 2018, I got my FA Part 107. So retired in 2019, need something to do. So back when I took my 107, I did it online. It didn't really take very well. So I went and did a local class at a local community college. And by the way, for the CFIs, if they want to teach these 107 classes, teach them at a local community college, it's a great revenue source to be able to do that. And so the instructor said, "This is my last class that I'm teaching. My wife's pregnant. We're moving." So after the class, I said, "Can I have your PowerPoint?" He said, "Sure." And so that was a start of me teaching the 107 class. Being from the fire service, I had instructor qualifications, and because we taught classes for the last 25 years, so just naturally take his PowerPoint, massage it, and make it mine. And so 2019, we started teaching. I think we did 5 that year. 2020, we doubled. We did 10. I thought this is a great part-time gig. 2021, we did like 30. And last year, we did 60 of these 107 classes. And I did 40 of those. So my retirement turned into almost a full-time job again. So it's been fun to be able to get out on the road and teaching. And our audience is really public safety and high school and community college instructors that teach this in their curriculum.
Okay, so that's a pretty wide demographic there. So everything from those safety professionals to those kids, quite frankly, in high school or just getting into community colleges who are up and coming in aviation.
And in high school, this being taught through the career technical education side where welding and mechanics lives. So these high schools are looking for instructors to come in and teach their students the FAA Part 107 rules and regulations to prepare them to go take the FAA exam. So here in North Carolina, where I'm located, there's about 100 high schools that have the 107 classes. So we get thousands of students graduating every year with their FAA Part 107, and somebody's got to teach it.
Right, and it needs to be taught well. And the nice part with the 107 certificate is a good chunk of the knowledge you need for that. Your average flight instructor is already going to have. Your Part 91 rules, your Part 61, um, weather, airspace concepts, all of that stuff is knowledge flight instructors already have.
Especially the checklist. Those are important to be able to go through to make sure everything is good. The weather, no TFRs, And so having that discipline from a CFI, the kids need that discipline to make sure they just don't fly a drone in the middle of a TFR or, when there's bad weather going on. So CFIs would be a great opportunity to do that.
And to really be able to also instill the seriousness of there's manned aircraft out there too, and the importance of staying down below. Because certainly, I live in a big cookie cutter neighborhood, and I've had occasions where drones just buzz over my house and somewhere, and I'm like, I have no idea where that came from. I'm sure it's just a kid somewhere, but yeah, they've got to learn that, and flight instructors are a great source of that, and they already come in with that level of authority that yeah, you've done this on kind of I want to say both sides of the fence. That kind of makes it sound like we're doing two different things when we're not. These are all aircraft, and they all are. You're going to have your pilot certificate or your 107 certificate uh, to do that. Um, so for a flight instructor who is only has man certificates right now, what is their path to getting that 107 certificate?
So from like a Part 61,
Yeah, so someone who's in yeah, has their an active flight instructor currently flying, all those credentials are current. What's their path to getting that 107 certificate?
going through another CFI and being checked off that they understand the rules and regulations from the bottom up. They know everything from the top down, but knowing the 400-foot rule, AGL, that they don't exceed that 400 foot, flying in Class Bravo, Charlie, or Delta airspace where you're in the center. You got to get that Lance permission in order to be able to fly. So you've got to be indirectly talking to air traffic control through Lance to make sure they understand that you're in that controlled airspace. As a 107 pilot, we don't communicate two-way radios. We don't have ADSB out, so they have no clue we're there unless we file for Lance authorization. So that's important. And flying in Class Echo airspace, the Theta Magenta starts at 700 feet. So 699 to the surface is that Class G Gulf airspace. And that's what we enjoy flying in. And to make sure that we never bust that ceiling if we're doing a high inspection of an antenna or a tower, we want to make sure we're not popping into that Class Echo airspace accidentally. So knowing that from the bottom up is important. And that's what they get whenever they're checked off by their CFI to go from Part 61 to the Part 107. And there's no charge. There's no test, no PSI visit. It's all very seamless.
Okay. And they do have to still take the test on FAAsafety.gov.
Didn't you transfer? Did you go from 61 to 107?
I did, yeah, and I had to I did a little like ground school through one of the big online ground school providers just to bring up my knowledge. And then I did do a test on FAA safety .gov for the original issuance and then the renewals.
There was no charge.
No, there was no charge
Okay.
for it. So it just on the Wings website and did that. And then uh, a friend and I wanted to do it at the same time, so we both kind of did our little ground schools. We took the test, and then we brought our laptops together, exchanged driver's licenses, and signed each other off in IACRA.
What a
So.
great testimony.
Um, so that's how I did it, and my friend did it. And so it's funny we had been, friends for years. So we're just sitting there with our driver's licenses, going like, "Yep, you still look like you, but you've got to type that ID number into IACRA." So, um, it was a pretty simple and painless process for me and any other Part 61 pilot, who has that current flight review would have the same experience. Wayne, you had a background in these emergency services, and you mentioned your history of fire departments. For someone who doesn't have those connections already, how would, your average Part 61 instructor who gets this 107, gets a bit of drone flying experience, approach something like an emergency services department about providing this training?
I think going through the locations where these firefighters are being trained, let's say the local community college, and I would reach out to their director and say, we'd like to offer FA Part 107 classes to your public safety. Can you introduce me to some local fire chiefs that I can talk to and see if we can help them with these classes? So I think that's one way of being able to do it. And maybe just showing up at a fire department and just introducing yourself and who you are. And you would like to be able to see whether or not they would be willing to host a class and then invite other firefighters from the area to come in for the class.
Hmm.
And you know, this is something that I do. It's a little trade secret. If someone will host a class, I don't charge their firefighters a fee. I'll give them a comp or two comps to be able to host the class. So it's free for them, but they'll help me do the advertisement to their peers, people that they know that I don't know, that I'm nobody to their peers, but this chief carries weight in his area in his region. So if he reaches out, then he brings me credibility.
That is a good tip. Yeah, especially if you are working in a more dispersed area. I'm thinking about where I live. I live outside of the line where I'm eligible for municipal emergency services. So they're like third or fourth down the list, and it's all volunteer departments who would respond to my house first. And all three of them would have to be busy before the city would come out here. And so, those are great because you are going to have, a degree of turnover and people who are going to constantly need to learn this information. And they aren't manned pilots. And if they aren't doing this regularly, there could also be opportunity for, their refresher training or, brush up sessions here and there. So it goes far beyond just that initial getting into, and that initial training to get them ready.
And don't discount the word of mouth. Chief, who else do you know that might need this training?
Yeah, certainly those local connections can be powerful. And then once you've made those connections, say you've done a couple of these classes, you might get someone who's excited about coming to you as a customer for manned aircraft training.
Right. I think it's a side door way to be able to bring people in. So even just having interest, are you interested in flying drones? Let's have an interest meeting today. And those folks that get into the 107, and just my understanding is with this training of weather and airspace, you're about 60% through your ground school. And as an Part 61 or certified flight instructor, you teach in that class, you already know what their weak points and strong points are. And as you're teaching that class, you're already thinking this would make an excellent Part 61 pilot, and help them, mentor them, find any type of grants or opportunities through AOPA, any of those to be able to help them along to be able to get their Part 61. But you've already got a candidate there that's interested in aviation. So why not take them to that next level? Maybe the same thing as being a private pilot and taking them to the next level, being a twin engine. So you're nurturing and mentoring those folks. So bringing them from a 107 to a private pilot would be seamless.
Yeah, so they do have a lot of that out of the way. And that's where also, like you'd mentioned, high schools and community colleges, if you can get in there, there's certainly tons of scholarships and things out there available for those types of students who could, get them started in drones because it is a great starting point. They get that baseline knowledge and they get excited for it and it doesn't cost like $10,000 right off the bat. So you can get them excited, get them that knowledge base built, and then, get them excited about manned aircraft and those scholarship opportunities. So it kind of seems like the common thing we keep coming back here to are those local community colleges. And certainly the one up the road from me started a UAS program maybe 3 years ago, I think is when I first started hearing about it.
Hmm.
So they're certainly out there. Now, for a manned flight instructor who wants to get into this, and they may not necessarily have any drone experience. Like I've flown a drone a couple of times, but in one of those like indoor arenas, so we weren't really worried about 107. It was indoors, and so I I've probably got a solid 20 minutes of drone flying experience under my belt in highly controlled conditions. I was pretty proud of myself. We had little hula hoops spread out, and we had to like kind of jump the drone from one to the other. And like there was one like a almost uh, like a bar set up, and you kind of had to take it over the bar or under the bar. I was pleased with myself. I'm not going to say it was smooth and beautiful, but I was I was happy with what I did. But how would you recommend that a an average manned aircraft flight instructor get into flying the drone to kind of help, build some of that credibility when they do approach people? Like, yeah, I've got so many hours. I fly this type of device. Or is there anything like that that may help with that credibility or even being able to offer that hands-on experience? Like, hey, I can bring my drone to your class and, you don't have to worry about 107 or giving people credentials if you do have, an empty indoor classroom or something like that where the drone can't get into the airspace.
Right. And you bring up a great point. Being indoors without the ability of the drone to go out a window or a door, you're not flying under the FAA rules anymore. So you're flying uh, under OSHA if there's an injury, right?
Different set of rules to think about. But yeah, we actually used an aircraft hangar, and I mean it was empty. All the aircraft were outside. The doors were closed up tight. So of course there's always a risk of a flyaway or something like that. But we kept the minimum number of people in there, and we had no one was walking around where the course was actually set up, and
And some schools actually set up netting. So they'll have a net to be able to fly in. So that way, if they are outside or inside, it gives that added protection to be able to fly. So, as a Part 61 going over to 107, they just need to buy a drone, whether they go to Amazon and buy a $300 drone or a $1,000 drone. Don't go cheap. You need the drone to be able to have access to GPS. And what I found, the $99 drones that you have to constantly be, working and flying, it doesn't actually communicate with satellites. Where the $400 and up typically have that ability to have control. So if you let loose the sticks, you'll just hover in place. And those are the ones that you want to be able to buy and be able to demonstrate. There's just a learning curve on trying to fly. I call it first person view, where you have to keep the drone up at all given times. And if you let your guard down, it just drops to the ground. So buying a drone that has the ability to communicate with satellite and just doing some show and tell. And when I know here in North Carolina, the high school students are required to wear eye protection and helmets, when they're flying. So that way, if a student gets a little bit, crazy with the drone, or hey, I'll see how close I can get to your face with it, you've got some type of protection. Kids are kids, right?
right. So that yeah, that sounds like my kids. Yeah. Um,
So just have it, get a drone, get some hours on it, understand it, how it works, and then maybe do fly days. I know that, on a Saturday, you may go out and say, today, this airport or we're sponsoring Fly Day, come and learn how to fly a drone and have kids come out. Be ready. I mean, you may have 50 kids show up, right? But having fly days and invite other pilots to come out with more drones and have kids be able to fly for the first time. And there's a community here, Smithville, North Carolina, that has a fly day every year, and they got a park dedicated just for drones. So they
oh,
can bring
cool.
their drones out and be able to fly. And some neighbors not complaining and calling, hey, I got drones in my backyard making noise. So it's a dedicated drone park for the city. And so kids come out there, they race drones and just offer those days to be able to come out, shake hands with parents, and get kids started. But the key thing is we can't discount here is that teaching them to fly safely and staying below 400 feet. I mean, I'm sure is that if I was a kid at 10 and I had a buddy that's 10, we both had drones, we'd probably try to fly our drones as high as we could to see who could outfly the other one. And today's drones can fly up to, 15,000 feet. May not be able to get them back down without the battery crashing on you, but 15,000 feet, imagine that. And so teaching safety and how to be able to fly a drone safely and keeping it out of your Class Echo airspace, whether aircraft or low flying helicopters could be in your city, like a medical helicopter.
Hmm.
I think the education is key at a young age for these children to be responsible if they're flying their drone.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely because kids are they're just going to get their ideas and run with it. Especially those younger ones. Hopefully those high school, younger college students. Maybe you can bake those ideas in a little bit better. But certainly, you're talking about 10-year-olds. Like I have a son who's going to be 9 here in a couple of months. I'm like, yeah, I can see all that. And it's like we don't have a drone. I'm kind of terrified of like what he would it said, or I would want to find one. It's that balance of finding one that's featured enough. I could put some electronic guardrails on it, but also not so expensive that when he slams it into the side of the house.
Yeah, you can't geofence them out to where they won't exceed 400 feet or they can't exceed, 500 feet out. So that would be important as well.
Yeah, so to think about those kinds of things. And you mentioned, some of those drones, at the functionality and features level you'd want to be approaching these community colleges and emergency services. Starting at the $400 range, and certainly they go on up for there from there. Is there any benefit in these flight instructors potentially exploring the used market for a hired feature one that might be at a lower cost?
Absolutely. As you know, as a new drone comes out, somebody's got to have that drone and they want to sell their other drone. So Facebook Market would be a good place. And also Amazon offers refurbished drones. So it
Oh,
may be somebody has refurbished one, DJI sells refurbished ones. So I think that's a great opportunity to be able to do. But I would always ask, how many times has it been crashed? And, if I was going to buy a used drone, I'd at least go fly it first just to make sure everything is good to go. But absolutely, yeah. So for an example, I've got a Mini Mavic 3 that I bought new. Well, the Mini Mavic 4 Pro is out now. So immediately the 3 value went down 200 or 300 bucks, but it's still a great drone to use. It's like, I don't know what the newest iPhone is, but mine's, I bought 3 years ago. It still makes phone calls. It still texts, but it's not the newest and the greatest. So if you don't have to have the newest and greatest, there's some great deals out there for you.
okay. Yeah, so that's good. That could help lower the cost of entry. So even for flight instructors, I remember being a young flight instructor and trying to fly instruct full time and that being my primary income stream. And so naturally you're going to have some ebb and flow with that. We where I lived, we called it No Fly November for reasons, primarily freezing fog. And so,
Saving for Christmas.
huh?
And saving money for Christmas, I'm sure.
Yeah. And but just trying to pay rent in that. And I say, oh, go buy another couple $100 drone. Well, but the used market could be a great place to get that started. And then, even once you have that drone, as you're starting to get out there, into those high schools, those community colleges, making contacts, with your local fire departments and such, don't forget that 107 is still a standalone certificate. So you could, have a whole second line of business for those days where, maybe the weather is such that flying manned aircraft isn't an option. You got a low icing overcast or something like that. But, it's still 800, 1,000 feet up there, taking photos for a realtor of, a local residential unit. It's probably still well within the realm of possibility.
Absolutely. And I want to just go back if these instructors develop a relationship with community college and they're teaching multiple, they should ask the community college to go out and buy drones that the students can fly. So it's not like you got to provide the plane. The school said, "Oh, this program is catching on. It's really taking off." So they may go out and buy 10 of those $1,000 drones or $800 drones,
Hmm.
for students to be able to fly. So don't be bashful to ask the school to provide them. And if the fire department, they may already have drones. They're just looking to get their folks certified. So
Hmm.
they may already have drones as well in place. But revenue, that's a great topic. Real estate is one of those. For an example, I'll charge 250 bucks to go out and do 20 photos. Takes me 30 minutes to be able to do all that. So that's equivalent to about 500 bucks an hour. I just got a job to fly a new housing development going up, and they want me to go out there weekly and fly. for the next 6 months. So, you figure if it's $150 a trip, times 6 months for the week, each week. I mean, that's a revenue source. What would you do
Hmm.
with an extra, 150, 300, $600 a month? That's equivalent to $7,200 a year, spending 30 minutes flying a job.
Hmm.
Crops inspections, agriculture is another way drones are being used to inspect and also to fly pesticides and insecticides over crops, these larger drones. Marketing. Um, People are looking for drones to be able to market a used car sale a lot. So you fly your drone over the autos, or marketing a, new shop or a new cafe that's opening and going up and doing orbits around to be able to show exactly where it's located. But and those local community colleges, you can't forget those as well. So there's all kind of resources available out there for you to be able to go fly, and maybe just doing some contract for local government.
See, I'm sitting here thinking everything you described. I used to fly a photographer. We did aerial photography in a 172. So I would sit in the right seat. We would take the little screw out of the window so that way the window could go all the way up. The photographer would sit in the left seat, and we took pictures of all those things that you're describing, like in town. So, your local big box stores. He did have a contract with the local public works. And so we spent a lot of time not making friends with air traffic control because they were doing a big road construction project on a road that was perpendicular to the flight path to the primary runway, like 3 miles out. So I'd have to fly this little 172 within the delta, perpendicular to the big runway. So, we tried to time our flights because, we the air carriers kind of came at certain times a day. So we tried to schedule around those as best we could, but of course, still weather dependent. But I'm sitting here thinking, what of what I was doing there in a 172 couldn't be done with a drone right now? Certainly with more options of when to do it because you're not dependent on these VFR weather rhythms. Because of course I had to stay 1,000 feet above the city and things like that. And then it was just all up to the photographer to manipulate the camera to get the closer shots. Whereas now you can have that drone right there. There would still be some limitations. We did some projects where they wanted higher photos, so we'd be doing stuff up at 5,000 feet or things that were more like rural, 100 miles outside of town, where yeah, a manned airplane is going to be a lot faster to get there than driving. But a lot of what we did was taking pictures in town. And so if you're already there, I'm like, why wouldn't they do a drone to do that right now? That certainly would have been by time, they were paying the photographer, however much they were paying him, plus the cost of me, plus the cost of the airplane.
Fuel, right? And drones are
Yeah,
around.
yeah, it was a wet rate on the airplane, but yeah. So versus they could have just like gotten in their car, driven 20 minutes from home and launched a drone to do this for the cost of the photographer, operator, and however long it took to charge those batteries.
And the drone cost is somewhere around $25 an hour.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't get a manned pilot to show up for that. And then you'd have more options. Like I say, even if it was a 1,000 foot overcast day, you could still get some of those low shots and things like that, where with a manned aircraft, completely out of the question.
You said it.
So, tons of great opportunities out there for flight instructors. Plus, you also are already bringing the credibility of you understand the airspace, you understand manned aircraft operations, you understand the big safety picture. So a manned aircraft flight instructor going out and getting the 107, getting a bit of practice with a drone, even one from the used market, or maybe see if you can take one of those 107 classes yourself at the local community college and get some practice. I would imagine most facilities like that, have a gymnasium or something like that where they may be doing, like so those little indoor activities where they're hopping them between the hula hoops and under the bar and things like that. And so you could get some practice and open up a whole line of business that could bring some revenue for you on those weather days or tough seasonal transitions, or bring more manned aircraft into the fold by inspiring people to
Right. And doing
It's
these
fun.
jobs, you can bring family along. So if you're going to some location and you want to do something else with the family, then bring your kids along, and they can help you be a visual observer, right? To be able to do something fun afterwards. So you can always bring your family and make it a family day as well. Take 20 minutes, go knock out a job, get $100, $200, and go do your thing.
Yeah, and it's super cool. Yeah, like I said, it happens that quick. I had some hail damage at home a couple years ago, and the roofing company came out and they did my roof inspection with a drone, and it was super fast. And they just recorded it all, took some still shots. Now the roofing company did it for free because they ultimately got a contract to replace the roof. So so they made their money that way. But certainly that you could do that as a just a Part 107 pilot and hand those photos over, if it was the homeowner or anything like that who wanted them.
Here's a
Uh,
great idea. Connect with a roofing company. And I know a gentleman does this. He is on call. And when the have a hail damage come through, let's say it's like, golf balls, softballs, hail coming in. And the roofing company will hire a weather person and say, tell us where that hail fell, in this geographical area. And they'll hire a drone pilot to go out and fly all the roofs, and everything is set up to where it's GPS, and
mhm,
they'll actually use that image, those videos, to do a proposal on replacing their roof. And somebody will go to the door and put a door
Oh,
hanger on the door saying, we've inspected your roof and the cost is estimated to be this. You'll call this number, we'll call the insurance company, and we'll get it replaced for you.
mhm.
So they're
Yeah.
being proactive, and they're paying this drone pilot $60 an hour plus expenses to be able to spend 2 days, 3 days in this area just video and photographing roofs that have hail damage.
That's
And they get
absolutely
two or
what
three
happened
roofs.
here. Dozens of roofs got replaced in my neighborhood. And so, yeah, we had the people knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, your roof looks like it's eligible," um, and things like that. So, absolutely. And we didn't even have hail that big. It was quarter or a little bit bigger size than that, and it did enough damage that a lot of roofs got replaced.
Right. So being proactive and building those relationships with local roofers will be another revenue source.
So yeah, and just as we're sitting here talking, we keep coming up with more and more ideas on how to do this. So if there's a story to be told here for our audience, it's that this is a great opportunity for you as a manned flight instructor to use your credentials to bring in another revenue stream. And of course, you can, if all that you're doing this independently, this kind of on call, on demand type stuff, you could fit that around your manned aircraft schedule or do this, on days those weathers are bad. Because we know. You're not fooling NAFI that you're not trying to get those hours in your logbook for most of those new instructors. But we also know you got to pay bills, and getting to that part was expensive. I paid off student loans for a long time, and so this could be another great source for you to bring in some of that additional revenue. You'll also have to do a little bit of legwork, understand your tax obligations and things that may come along with an independent revenue stream.
But the
So we
drone
don't
is
want.
deductible. The drone is deductible, of course. The mileage going to your job is deductible.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
spend some time on understanding that because you may have, state level obligations and things like that will vary quite widely. But yeah, if you set this up as a business, there could be, financial benefits, deductions, and things like that. You'll want to spend some time understanding. But your state likely has like a small business administration or something like that can have some resources that can help get you started. And in understanding that aspect of it. So I'm not an expert in that. I just know it's a thing. So I'm going to let you know that it's a thing and stop any conversation there before I get into trouble. We don't want to provide any advice in that area, but just know that those are considerations when you do have those types of revenue streams. You may have obligations for in that arena.
one other one I just thought is joining a local realtors association as an associate member. And by paying $300 a year, you get invited to their networking events, and there could be 100, 200, 300 realtors there at that event. So just handing out business cards is another way, an opportunity just to get out and ask for business.
Yeah, and that's a very competitive market. And so I see more and more realtors using that, and even these whole, not just pictures of the house, these whole promotional videos that they're posting where they do like these kind of audio walking tours of properties that you can tell there's no way they didn't do it without a drone. Um, so, all right. Well, Wayne, let's wrap it up there. That's been about 35 minutes. And I really appreciate you coming on today. I want to reiterate that Wayne does lead our special interest group for drone instructors. This is a free resource for any NAFI member. You can hop on to our membership platform, my.nafimentor.org, log in, head to the SIGS area of that website, and there's a group there you can join. You can ask discussion questions, things like that. So utilize that resource. Understand how this segment of aviation, well, it feels or it may look like it's far away from you as a manned flight instructor. It's not, and there's a lot of great business opportunities and professional connections for you to be made there because you never know who knows who. So even meeting that local fire chief, they might know someone who at the airport who, was looking for a pilot or something. So there's no harm in making connections. And if you can, use your knowledge to promote safety and earn a little bit extra cash along the way, all the better.
Absolutely. And since you're usually attached to an airport, just start with the local ARF. Those air crash rescue guys, they've got a fire chief, and fire chiefs know other fire chiefs. So start there on asking for recommendations.
Okay, great. All wonderful advice. Well, thank you, Wayne, so much for coming on today. And I am so thankful to have you as a NAFI volunteer leading this sync group.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of NAFI's More Right Rudder podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. You can get this podcast in video version on YouTube, or you can get the audio version anywhere you get your podcasts.